Hey, what's going on there, guys and gals? Welcome back to another episode. This is the Kawasaki ZH2, and if you've been following the channel recently, then you know exactly what this bike is. It is a supercharged hyper naked from Kawasaki, and in today's episode we're going to discuss whether or not superchargers are a gimmick. Let's get to it. Alrighty, so you can see the massive supercharged logo there in red right here, because Kawasaki want you to know in nice big bold letters that this is a supercharged motorcycle. So Kawasaki currently have 4 motorcycles in their lineup that have a supercharger. This ZH2, the H2 SX, the H2 Ninja, and of course the H2R Ninja, the H2R being the track only variant of the Ninja H2. So what we're going to go out for a ride, and we're going to discuss whether or not this supercharger on this ZH2 is actually worth it, and whether or not it actually makes any difference. So what we'll do, we'll get on the bike and let's go for a ride. See, it's a little bit warmer today. 7 or 8 degrees. Well, the bike's saying 5 degrees now, but it's supposed to be 7 degrees ambient. But I'll tell you right now, as soon as you start riding, that windshield really hits you. Yeah, so if you're riding in 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, then as soon as that windshield hits you, you're probably looking at more like 0 degrees Celsius. Yeah, horrible. Man, I love this bike. It's so awesome. Yeah, so I thought it was a good opportunity to come out and actually film a vlog today, a moto vlog, considering that it was supposed to be a little bit warmer, but according to the bike it's not, which is kind of annoying, but there you go. We're out and about, so we might as well make a video, right? Okay, guys and gals, so for those of you that don't know, a supercharger, a bit like a turbocharger, is forced induction. So what that means is it's a turbine that's going to blast extra fresh air into the cylinders of your engine. And interestingly enough, Kawasaki are the only manufacturer, the only motorcycle manufacturer so far that have put forced induction engines in their motorcycles. Which is kind of strange. Why? Why are Kawasaki the only company to have done this? Well, maybe the other manufacturers are probably begging the question whether or not it's actually worth it to put in a supercharger or a turbo from stock. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, Kawasaki obviously have spent a load of R&D on developing their superchargers for their motorcycles, and Kawasaki is a heavy industries company, so they have all of the engineering skill needed to produce an engine like this. But no doubt the other manufacturers have also had similar ideas to put forced induction motors into their motorcycles, but none of them have done it. So maybe it's just too expensive or something like that, who knows. I mean, this ZH2, I bought it for £16,000. It's not the SE model. The SE model, you're looking at another £2,500 on top of this one. Oh, thanks, mate. Jesus Christ, no indicating and nothing. Oh, horrible. Guys, use your blinkers. Come on, man. Use your indicators. It's not that difficult, is it? Anyway. Right, back to the topic at hand. So Kawasaki are the only manufacturer that have somehow been able to develop a supercharged motor that I assume is profitable. Who knows, maybe they're making a loss on these bikes, but yeah, the ZH2 I believe is the cheapest supercharged H2 in their lineup, and it's amazing. It's so good. It's so good. So what's the difference between a turbo and a supercharger? So most of you probably already know what a turbo is. You stick it on the end of the exhaust, well, not on the end of the exhaust, but coming out of the exhaust manifold, and it spins a turbine. So the gases that are coming out of the exhaust from the motor, from the cylinders, are pushing against this turbine, spinning a turbine. That turbine is connected to another turbine, which is connected to the intake. and basically it forces more air into the intake. So that's how turbos work. They're quite straightforward and they're quite simple. But a supercharger, so a supercharger works in a very similar way, where it has a turbine which is forcing more air into the cylinders. But a supercharger is actually run off the camshaft, I believe. Is it the camshaft or the crankshaft? I think it's the camshaft. I can't remember. But yeah, so as the shaft spins faster, the turbine spins faster and you get more boost. And effectively what it does is it gives you extra displacement, because a natural displacement of an engine is limited to the size of it. So in this case it's a 998cc inline 4 in this ZH2. But when you add a supercharger into the mix, you can force loads and loads of extra air into the cylinders before it combusts. And yeah, in effect it's supposed to add more power. The more air, the more fuel you add into your cylinders, the more bang you get, and therefore the more power you get. That's the basic principle. And it certainly works. In the case of this ZH2, it certainly works. So let's take a look at, say, Kawasaki's next naked offering, the Z1000, which, by the way, is a 1043cc inline 4. So it's got slightly bigger cylinders than the ZH2 has. And it's producing about 140 horsepower, which is significantly less than this ZH2 at about 200 horsepower. So clearly from that standpoint it is making a massive difference. But then you look at a ZX-10R, for example, a Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R that's pushing 210 horsepower, and that is a naturally aspirated 1 litre sport bike. But the way how they're producing more horsepower from that particular motor is of course RPM, higher compression ratios and all that stuff. So there's other ways that you can produce horsepower other than just slapping on a supercharger or a turbo. And of course it is very popular to stick on aftermarket turbos on Hayabusas and Gixxer 1000s, and usually it's because those engines are built a little bit stronger so they can take a little bit more pressure in the cylinders. And guys, that's the trade-off, is when you have a forced induction motor, you're adding extra wear to the motor. The cylinders have to take a lot more pressure than what they would do if they were naturally aspirated. So the life of the engine probably won't be as long as a naturally aspirated engine. It's the same in cars, the same in any kind of motor. You force more air into the cylinders, you get a bigger boom, it's going to create more wear on the engine. So yes, it is a trade-off, and personally, if you are going to buy a ZH2, Ninja H2, H2SX, if you are going to buy a supercharged Kawasaki, then personally I would recommend either looking brand new or maybe a year old, depending on the mileage. If it's got like 50,000 miles after a single year, then yeah, maybe not that. But something that's got less than 5,000 miles, a year, maybe 2 years old, that's what I'd recommend if you're going to look at a supercharged motorcycle. And most Japanese bikes, you're looking at well over 30,000 miles for most Japanese bikes, from Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and of course Kawasaki. Yeah, as long as they're maintained well and they're looked after, well over 30,000 miles. And honestly, a lot of them have got well over that. You look at some bikes and they've got over 50,000 miles and they're still running pretty good. So yeah, Japanese bikes are well built, to say the least. But I don't know if the H2 line has matured enough for us to know how reliable these engines are over the long period. I mean, obviously they are reliable over the short period. The Ninja H2 has been going for about 5 years now, or 6 years. I think it came out in 2015, didn't it? So obviously this supercharged technology is okay, it is reliable. But how long for is the question, the big question. It's quite funny because I remember going to Japfest, which is a Japanese car show. I can't remember where it was now, but this was, you're looking at about 10 years ago now. I haven't been there since, unfortunately, but it was a really good event. And they had a racetrack there, they were doing drift events and all sorts of stuff. They had a dyno, and it was great. But one of the people that we were going there with, they were in a Mazda MX-5, or if you're in the States, that's a Mazda Miata. And they are, what are they, 1.2? It was an old one, I think a first or second gen MX-5 Miata. So I can't remember the exact engine size, but I think it was a 1.2 litre. One of the guys there stuck a turbocharger onto his car, and all the guys thought it was quite funny. Like, why would you put a turbocharger on a 1.2? It makes more sense to put forced induction, well, I don't know, equipment, forced induction equipment onto engines that have larger cylinders, you know, because you have more potential to make more horsepower. So it didn't really make much sense. But then you look at Kawasaki, and they decided to put a supercharger onto a 998cc inline 4, and it's clearly working, you know. And on a motorcycle, I suppose it makes more sense because you get a significantly better power to weight ratio than you would do on a MX-5. So that's all well and good, you know. There's nothing wrong with putting forced induction equipment on a motorcycle. Modders have been doing it for a long time, as I mentioned earlier, with Suzuki and turbochargers. So it does make sense from a certain standpoint if you are looking for a lot of performance from your bike, or if you're a drag racer or something like that. It makes sense to add a little bit of forced induction to motorcycles for sure. But on a stock motorcycle, this is a stock motorcycle from Kawasaki, you can get this from the factory, from the production line. Does it make sense to have one when, you know, you can get naturally aspirated 1000cc bikes that produce as much, or if not more, horsepower than this? Yeah, it's a very interesting argument as to what's better. Do you get something that revs out higher, so you can get more power out of a higher revving engine, or do you have something that revs out a little bit lower, but you can still produce a very similar amount of horsepower and probably a load more torque from something that has a supercharger or a turbo? Yeah, it's difficult to say, and I mean, let's be honest here, okay? Kawasaki with their Ninja H2, supercharged H2, is producing significantly more horsepower than, say, a Fireblade, the new Fireblade SP, you know, which is producing 214 horsepower, which I think is the most from a sport bike currently that is naturally aspirated. So I don't think there is any argument there about the potential for forced induction motors when it comes to motorcycle performance. So they are certainly worth it, and they certainly produce a significant amount of horsepower, have the potential to produce a significant amount of horsepower than a naturally aspirated motor does. And then you look at the likes of the H2R, which is on a complete other level. So no, superchargers are not gimmicks when it comes to high performance motorcycles. And yes, they are expensive. A Ninja H2, you're looking at, I don't know, 25k, 30k, which, believe it or not, is about the same price as a Fireblade SP from Honda. So yeah, from that standpoint, it is price competitive, and you're getting a load more horsepower. I think Kawasaki were very brave with the ZH2 because it's completely different to other hypernakeds that are on the market. I mean, well, the closest is the KTM Super Duke, of course, the 1290 Super Duke R. That is probably the closest competitor to this ZH2. Because when you're looking at a street bike, you don't necessarily need 200 horsepower from a street bike. When you look at an MT10 producing 160 horsepower, about the same for a Super Duke, what was the point? What was the point in adding a supercharger to a street bike? Does it really make that much difference to a street bike? That is an interesting debate, because if I'd had an opportunity to ride a, I don't know, a KTM, Super Duke, or Yamaha MT10, then maybe my opinion would change on the matter. But this bike is amazing. That supercharger is by no means a gimmick. It certainly adds an extra level of performance that I've never experienced before from any other kind of bike, and that's including the ZZR 1400, the ZX14 that I've got in the garage. Yeah, significantly different, and it feels like a much more powerful bike. It feels like a faster bike than my ZZR, which doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. But seriously, that's how this bike feels. It's like a level above the ZZR, and by extension the Hayabusa. I assume that you're going to get a similar experience if you do whack on a turbocharger to a Hayabusa. But yeah, this thing is absolutely mad. Absolutely insane. I struggle to describe the pure insanity this bike is, and I try my absolute best to explain it in our review, so I'll leave that in the top corner for you to watch afterwards. So if you want to know more about this ZH2, then yeah, go check out our review of this bike. It is a very special bike, to say the least, and especially when you think of how much competition there is in the 1 litre space and in the naked space. Yeah, this ZH2 is certainly top of the class. I'm going to say it, top of the class. I'm sorry, any of you that are Super Duke owners, you may disagree, but this thing is just amazing. Honestly, a supercharger is the real deal, okay? If you are looking to get a H2, regardless of which one it is, they are the real deal. I think, well, having said that, the H2SX is a different beast. Yes, it has torque and it feels great to ride, but that is not as vicious as something like this, I don't think. Yeah, this thing is significantly more vicious than a H2SX, I believe. Because it's a more touring oriented bike, it's a heavier bike. I believe the H2SX weighs as much as the ZZR. Again, don't quote me on that, I can't remember, but yeah, it's a heavier bike than either the Ninja H2 and the ZH2. Of all the things that motorcycle manufacturers add to motorcycles, to street bikes, you know, street bikes that are designed for the road, electronic suspension, launch control, of all these gimmicky features, a supercharger is not a gimmick. Because the one thing that it does, at least in the case of the ZH2, is it gives you more power on tap when you need it. It's not like a sport bike where you need to rev it out to get the power. And on a 1 litre, most of the time you're not even hitting the power band. So there's kind of no point, unless you want to use up all your fuel and you're constantly up 8,000-9,000 RPM all the time. I really want to get past this bus because it's obscuring my vision. I don't like that at all. Woo! Finally got past that bloody bus. Yes, guys and girls, a supercharger is not a gimmick, at least in the case of the H2 lineup. They seriously add a load of performance, and you get that performance on tap. It's right there, you know, like, it is just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And you can tell that Kawasaki have geared this bike in first, second, third gear for a load of fun, fourth, fifth, sixth for eco. Because I don't get the eco sign coming up at all whenever I'm in first, second or third. I mean, that might be the way I ride it, but I'm in third at the moment. Look, it's already gone. Here you go. If I put on the gas just a little bit, there it goes. Woo! Like, as soon as you get that mid-range, man, that front wheel just wants to come right up off the ground. I'm not even 100% throttle on the gas there, guys and girls. I can feel that front wheel floating up. Yeah, absolutely wicked. Wicked experience. And yeah, I wouldn't trade this for anything at the moment. Unless something better comes around the corner, I'm not trading this for anything. I certainly want to have a go on a Ninja H2. And if I ever get the opportunity to own a Ninja H2, then yes, I'm going to take that opportunity without a doubt. But I mean, this is just a taste of what Kawasaki has to offer when it comes to their H2 lineup. Anyway, guys and girls, I'm going to leave the video here. My fingers are starting to get really cold. They're starting to hurt, so that is about the time, I think, for me to start heading back home. As always, make sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on supercharged motorcycles, or just turbochargers and superchargers in motorcycles in general. You know, do you own a Hayabusa or a GSXR 1000 and you've slapped on a supercharger? How's it like? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think there's more of a scene in America, in the States, where there's motorcycle drag races and stuff. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, guys and girls, about superchargers, about the H2 lineup. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And yes, don't forget that on Thursdays now we've got our live show to kind of make up for the lack of opportunities to go out and film vlogs with the cold and dark at the moment in the UK this time of year. It gets really dark really quickly and it gets really cold really quickly, so I don't get many opportunities anymore to get out and ride, nowhere near as much as I'd like to. So for the time being, we've got a live show featuring myself and the wife, so you get to see us in person. And yes, in this Thursday's show, we're gonna talk about motorcycle boots, and we're also going to discuss how difficult it is to understand the whole motorcycle world. There's a lot of jargon, it seems, in the motorcycle world, and we're going to discuss how easy or how hard it is to break into the motorcycle scene nowadays. But yeah, that's what we're going to discuss in this Thursday's live show, so stay tuned for that at 6 PM UK time, and we'll see you all there. Have a good one, guys and girls.